Tucked in the heart of Lenox, Massachusetts, stands an imposing 28,000 square foot Jacobean Revival mansion, an architectural giant that has served as the backdrop to a rich tapestry of people and causes over the years. Each passing era has left its imprint on the walls, the halls, and the very soul of this storied estate. And if you ask the caretakers who walk these halls today, they'll tell you some of the prominent figures who once lived here never truly left. With 54 rooms, 15 bedrooms, 13 bathrooms, and 17 fireplaces, this grand home, crafted from red brick and brownstone trim, once reigned as the centerpiece of a sprawling 28-acre landscape, complete with manicured gardens and sweeping lawns. Believe it or not, this magnificent mansion originally served as a seasonal summer cottage, although it still stands today as a powerful symbol of the ambition, elegance, and lasting legacy of America's Gilded Age. Every home, every building, every forgotten corner of land has a story. Some lost to time, some whispered through generations, and others waiting to be uncovered. Hi, I'm Billy from BMH Preservation, and if you're a fan of history and exploration, then you're in the right place. Please subscribe and turn on post notifications to join us as we dive deep into the hidden histories of the world's most fascinating properties. From grand estates with scandalous past to humble homes that once bore witness to extraordinary events. Join us as we go on site and see these homes in person. In 1891, Sarah Morgan, the sister of the financial titan J.P. Morgan, purchased the land with her seventh cousin and husband, George. At the time, another smaller historic home stood on the property, but rather than demolish it, Sarah had it carefully jacked up and relocated across Walker Street to a small property that they owned there to serve as the estate's guest house. To bring her vision to life, she hired the prominent Boston architectural firm Roch & Tilden, and over the course of the next 3 years, this mansion, Ventfort Hall, rose from the earth before it was officially completed in 1893. As you approach the house today, you pass beneath a porte cochere and step into a soaring 3-story great hall that's richly adorned with intricate woodwork throughout the entire space. This is the very same space where Mr. and Mrs. Morgan themselves waited to greet their guests for the home's first summer soiree in 1893. Just imagine the soft hum of voices, the rustling of fine gowns, and the sound of a live orchestra hidden in the musicians' gallery above the entry. When the sound of music drifted throughout the space, couples below danced under the impressive handcrafted Jacobean-style plaster ceiling. To the left of the entry is a striking wooden grand staircase that immediately captures your eye and leads to an upstairs hallway that offers an aerial view of the hall below. And at the center of the room is a massive limestone fireplace that anchors the space. It's stately, timeless, and commanding, its pale complexion popping out against the dark red oak paneled walls. And just ahead, sunlight spills through the original stained glass windows that cast colorful patterns on the floor, as if the house is still whispering the memories from another time. Stepping through the back center doorway, you're led onto a long wooden veranda that stretches the entire length of the home's back facade. An enchanting space for quiet moments and afternoon teas. Back in the 1890s, this veranda offered unobstructed views of Stockbridge Bowl Lake and the distant mountains behind it, acting as the perfect backdrop to this summer estate. Beyond the grand mansion itself, the estate once featured 2 gatehouses, a carriage house, a stable, and no fewer than 6 greenhouses. And it's said that George Morgan himself took great pleasure in overseeing these greenhouses personally. During our visit, we had the privilege of meeting a kind and deeply knowledgeable woman named Molly. With reverence and unmistakable pride, she shared stories and historical insights that brought the estate to life in ways that no guidebook ever could. And as we stood with her on the back veranda, overlooking the quiet tree line, we couldn't help but ask, have you ever experienced anything paranormal here? Given the mansion's long-standing reputation for paranormal activity, we were curious to hear if she'd ever witnessed anything herself. She paused for a moment, then shared that on one summer day, she was at the house, seated right here on this very porch, sipping her tea, when something in the distance caught her eye. There, walking just beyond the trees, she saw a young couple, a man and a woman, side by side, dressed in period-specific clothing. The man wore a seersucker suit. The woman had on a long shirt-waist dress. They walked out of the woods halfway across the lawn, and then they disappeared, she recalled. As quickly as they appeared, they vanished with no sound, no trace, just a fleeting glimpse of the past, as if the house itself had opened a small window to another time. And if you're interested in history and the paranormal, this house also hosts ghost events where they invite guests into the home with paranormal equipment. If you think the apparition that Molly saw was interesting, then just wait until what she shared with me when we were in the billiards room. When we left the veranda and stepped back into the Great Hall, we turned left into the library, a grand, richly paneled room that once housed the Morgans' extensive collection of books and artwork. Today, the space has been meticulously restored using archived photographs and a few original pieces from the home, bringing the room back to life. But this library holds more than just books. It also holds memory, because this was the very same room where George Morgan himself was laid to rest. When he passed away, his body was displayed here and served as the viewing parlor for his funeral. Stepping outside the library, across the Great Hall, is the formal dining room, a space that has been remarkably restored, especially considering that when the Ventfort Hall Association first purchased the property, the entire floor had collapsed into the basement. On site, I was asked by staff of the museum to not film and record this room, although I was allowed to take photos and a few videos in other key rooms. Looking at historic photos of this room, you may notice something surprising: a small dining room table placed right in the center. And this wasn't due to a lack of grandeur, but rather a reflection of love. Sarah and George Morgan were so deeply devoted to one another that they preferred to sit closely rather than at opposite ends of a long table. This intimate detail felt especially endearing, since what this table lacked in size, it made up with love that surrounded it. From the dining room, we continue into a hallway that appears very long, but the closer you look, you'll learn it's actually a brilliant optical illusion. The first section is ever so slightly shorter than the second, and the middle narrows just before the far end and dips down, creating a telescoping effect that draws the eye forward into a striking trick of design. At the end of this hall awaits the billiards room, and it was here that Molly, our guide, shared yet another unforgettable account that she was told by another woman who was working late inside the house one night. She claimed to encounter George Morgan himself standing casually in the billiards room. In fact, he offered her a glass of brandy, although he politely apologized because he couldn't remember where the brandy was kept. Although inside, if that is not interesting enough for you, there's more to discover in this room too. If you study the door panels as you walk in closely, you'll notice something odd. The panels are symmetrical but not identical. It's believed that the door on the right side was salvaged from a monastery, and just beyond, looking out over the back of the property, you'll see the elegant stained glass windows, each one beautifully preserved. These windows were carefully boarded up from the outside during the years when the house sat vacant, a decision that likely saved them from weather damage and also vandalism. As we discuss this home, it's also worth mentioning that this house wasn't just beautiful, it was also ahead of its time. When it was completed in 1893, it boasted the latest innovations of the era, a combination of gas and electric light fixtures, an electric elevator, central heating, indoor plumbing, ventilated bathrooms, and even burglar alarms. So it's easy to understand why the Morgans chose to spend their summers here at this breathtaking estate, surrounded by mountain views, endless gardens, and of course, their 3 children. Although sadly, tragedy struck in 1896 when Sarah passed away. From that point on, George Morgan continued returning to the home each summer with his children, but by 1911, after George passed away as well, their children made the decision to sell all of the estate's furnishings and began renting out the mansion. From 1911 to 1945, the home entered a new chapter. No longer just a private summer retreat, but a place that would pass through many hands and serve many purposes. The first tenant to occupy the mansion after the Morgans was Mrs. Margaret Vanderbilt, a prominent widow of New York high society. She began renting out the home shortly after the tragic death of her husband, Alfred Glenn Vanderbilt, who perished aboard the Lusitania when it sunk in 1915. By 1925, the estate changed hands again, this time purchased by William Roscoe Bonsall, a major figure in the expansion of the Southeastern Railroads. The Bonsall family would go on to privately own the mansion for the next 20 years, making them the longest-standing residents in the home's history. After the Bonsalls sold the estate in 1945, Ventfort Hall stepped into yet another role, although this time in service of the public. In 1946, it became a dormitory for the music students from Tanglewood, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, filling its rooms with the sound of practice and performance. Then, from 1950 to 1961, the estate was reimagined as the Festival House, a resort-style bed and breakfast that welcomed musicians and artists from across the region. Soon after, it was transformed once more, this time into Fauquien Ballet School, housing up to 100 young dancers at the time, filling the halls once again with the sound of footsteps, music, and laughter. But as happened before, the ballet camp eventually closed its doors in the 1970s, making yet another turning point. The final chapter to occupy the home was a religious group known as the Bible Speak Sector, who used the estate as housing until their bankruptcy in 1983. And for the first time in nearly a century, Ventfort Hall fell completely silent. No guests, no students, no music, just a grand, aging mansion, empty and waiting for life to come back into its walls. As the years went on, the once grand mansion slipped into a haunting state of disrepair. By 1991, the unthinkable loomed on the horizon. The house had been purchased by a developer who intended to tear it down and build a retirement complex in its place. The wrecking ball was coming, but just before history was erased, a group of locals rose to fight back. In 1994, a passionate preservation group formed the Ventfort Hall Association, and they worked tirelessly to save the estate. One of their first victories? Getting the mansion listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Then, in June of 1997, with the help of private donations, a 5-year loan from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and unwavering support from the Lenox community, the association officially purchased the property. The house was saved, but the real work had only just begun. Restoration efforts were massive. Since then, over $7 million has been invested in bringing Ventfort Hall back to life, funded through a mix of donations, grants, and public support. Thanks to the years of dedication from historians, craftspeople, and volunteers, large portions of the mansion have been lovingly restored to reflect its original splendor. What you're seeing in this video is just a part of the effort. Several rooms have also been beautifully restored. But to honor the wishes of those working at the house, I was asked to not film these additional rooms, so it will really be a nice surprise for you if you choose to visit yourself. Thankfully, I was given permission to take video of a few of the key rooms and also take photos of the additional rooms, so I wanted to share a few highlights of those rooms with you now, although I have to tell you, they don't do the rooms justice, so I highly recommend seeing them in person. That said, there's still a long road ahead. So if you feel inspired by this story, I encourage you to consider supporting the Ventfort Hall Association directly by donating to them. Every contribution helps to ensure that this extraordinary piece of American history can continue to be restored, preserved, and remembered one room at a time. As always, I'd like to thank you for joining us on this tour through Ventfort Hall. And if you've enjoyed this exploration, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss out on the next deep dive into another fascinating historic estate. It was a lot of fun to venture into Massachusetts for this historic estate series, since previously we've spent time in New York, Newport, and also North Carolina. So it was a lot of fun to be able to dive into a different area where there is a ton of history preserved. I'd also love to hear from you and ask, have you heard of this house previously and have you been on site? If not, I have to say it is magical to go to, and I was really blown away to learn how many purposes that this home has served throughout the years. I mean, talk about a place that holds so much history within its walls. So many people from so many different walks of life must have walked through these doors, so I am so happy that this place is still standing. And I know I've just said so many times, but it really is a great place. And please let us know if you have any recommendations for other historic properties to visit, since we would love to add them to our never-ending list of places we are writing down. All right, until the next video, I hope you're all safe, happy, and well, and we'll see you soon.